Have you ever wanted to maximize your movie day by cramming in as many movies as you can, but you need a little help planning because some of these megaplexes, it's just kind of hard to map out what's going on? Well, I've been doing this for many years, and I just wanted to show how to do it. We're going to use a movie site like Fandango, and we're going to use Notepad, and then we're going to use Excel, the greatest program ever written. And as with most things, when you're trying to learn a program like Excel, it always helps to have a specific project in mind. So this is a perfect example of that. Have a problem you need to solve, and then you just focus on those things that you need to solve it. So first thing to do is browse the movie site and find a theater that has a pretty good mix of movies that you're interested in seeing. And if you go to that theater's page, now all this may change in the future exactly how it's laid out, but it hasn't for a while. What I found here is that if you go to the print this page and just ignore the actual printing out, and you get this smaller version, this cleaner version here. If you right click and view source, then you get the source code for it all. Let's just select all with Control A, copy with Control C, and let's paste it with Control V into Notepad. So taking a look at this here, you've got all the HTML gobbledygook, and in the middle you can see these are the listings here, and they just kind of run by and they all kind of look the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the top where the first listing is, and let's eliminate everything from just before the title on up. So we'll just scroll all the way up here and hit delete, and then we'll do the same at the bottom. So what we're going to do here in Notepad is we're going to just kind of clean this up and be left only with the stuff that we care about. If there's a movie that you know you don't want to see, let's say you didn't want to see Taken 2, well then you can just eliminate that as well right in this step. But let's leave them all for now for this exercise. So for the bottom, the last listing always they always show the time twice here. So I'll just do it from just after the first last time, if you will. So I'm just going to eliminate from here on down, and just scroll down and delete that. All right, so now we're left with just the titles and their start times. This part here is sort of a little manual process, and it takes a little bit of time, but I'll go ahead and do it. But what I do is I'm going to eliminate most of the title. I don't really need, if I know it's Twilight, I don't need to know The Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2. I can't wait to see that. No, not really. But I'm going to eliminate all the way to the running length of the movie because we're going to need that in a moment. So I'm just going to highlight that and hit enter. And then I'm going to highlight this. I don't need the synopsis because presumably I kind of know what movies I want to watch anyway. So I'm going to go right down to here just before the times begin. You see the times begin right here? And here I'm going to hit delete. And then I'll leave all this for right now. The next one here, notice that these lines are all the same. That becomes important in a moment with the replace that we're going to do. But this last line is always different from the ones above it. And as I mentioned before, they show the time 2 times. On each of these lines, they show the time twice. Yeah, so here's 10:15, and then over here is 10:15 again. We'll deal with that later. But on this last line, you can save yourself some trouble by just eliminating the second time here and just go right down to the next title. So I'm going to hit enter right here and just put a space in between. So let me just do this a little more quickly just to show that it doesn't take forever to do. It just takes a little bit of time. Delete. And here to the next title, enter, enter. And to here, enter. And to here, I'm going to hit delete. The reason I don't hit enter again is that it gives me, oh, that worked that time. Well, it gives me this extra space. I don't really want this extra space. So anyway, so this just takes a little time to sift through here. So enter, enter. Well, actually, I do want to know that this is the IMAX version because it's different from the other version. So let's leave IMAX in there and just keep cleaning this up. Now, someday I'd like to learn how to program something to do this for me. I don't see any reason why it couldn't. If you'd like to do that for me, I would be most appreciative, but That's a little outside my my means at the moment, my abilities. Let's get rid of this, and let's delete that. And of course, obviously, however many movies there are will affect how long this takes. And from this here to Cloud Atlas, and then to the time, and delete. How much more do we have to go? 2 more movies. Again, at this point, if you know that you're not going to see, you know, a particular movie, then you can just cut it right out. No reason to do all this work if it's something that you're not going to see. Get rid of it down to here. And down to here. Alright, so now we're left with just titles and showtimes. Alright, so we're going to clean this up a little further now. We're going to get rid of this tag right here, this markup that appears throughout. If you just highlight that section and hit copy, and then Control H for replace, you can just paste it right in there and replace it with just null, just emptiness with nothing. So replace all, and now you see that's all gone from there. Do the same thing with this little thing right here. Copy, paste, replace it with just emptiness. Next we're going to, let's get rid of this latter part right here. These closing tags here. Copy, paste, replace all. This middle one we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it a little differently right here. Instead of replacing it with a blank space, let's replace it with a comma. Okay, so that's a little comma there, and we will, hold on, there we go, replace all, like that. Alright, so it's starting to get a little bit more readable. There's still a little bit of this here, so we will do this, do this. This time we'll replace it with null. And then finally, this one here for the last line, that notice that appears for the last time on each movie. We will copy and replace with blank. All right, so now you've got this going on here. Let's get rid of the space, HR space, that's in between each of the running lengths of the movie. So let's copy that and paste. And what we're going to replace it with is a colon. Okay, so you see now it's 2:29, and then finally we're going to get rid of the minute designation. So we'll hit copy there, replace, paste, and this time we'll replace it with just blank. Alright, so there you go. What you're left with now is the title, the running length, and then this breakdown here of the times. But you see that the time appears twice, and one thing I didn't want to do is, and I used to do this, is I would just manually delete these here, and that's kind of ridiculous. So at this point, let's highlight everything and hit copy, and let's go into Excel, the greatest program ever written. All right, so in an Excel document, blank one, you just paste with Control V. Now what it's going to do oftentimes is this, which is that it just takes a guess on how the data is going to be laid out, and so each one of these cells has the time, comma, and the time, but we're going to want to split that up. So there's a function here under data called text to columns, and it brings up this little wizard here, this 3-step wizard. Choose delimited. Characters such as commas separate each field. Now that's why we inserted a comma in here. So we click next. You tell it which delimiter to use, which symbol are you using to designate the difference between the two columns, and we are using comma. Down here it gives you a preview of kind of what it would look like, and notice that now we have the 2 times separated, and then you click next. And then here it's just sort of an opportunity to change the formatting of the columns and things like that. Now one thing you could do is just click finish, and then what it's going to do is it's going to put it into two columns, A and B, and then you can just delete B. But you can save a step if you just highlight here this column that you don't want, because these are just duplicate times. You can just choose do not import column. So you see this one is going to be formatted in general, this one is going to be skipped altogether. So now when you click finish, in effect that second time goes away. Let's see if we can do that again. Data or text to columns, delimited. It remembers now that it's comma. Let's leave him this time, and you'll see how all it does is it uses the comma in order to tell it when to go to another cell. So see, these are now side by side instead of being inside the same cell. And then you can just right click and zap it. So I just saved that extra step is all I did there. All right, next, for my exercise, I want the times to not be this way, but actually oriented this way, because it's a little easier for me to read on one page, because this is kind of long, kind of goes down to too many rows. So let's go this way in time. So here what we're going to do is we're going to take the time range for each movie and copy, Control-C, and we are going to go, let's say right here, and we're going to paste. There are all these different paste options here, and we're going to use a special one. Normally when you hit Control-V, you get this. Wait, no, you get this. No, you get, actually, normally when you hit Control-V, you get the equivalent of just paste, which oddly enough here it says it's P. But anyway, you just make a copy of it, and that's not what we want. What we actually want is to do a paste special, and they have all these shortcuts right here for you as well. We want this one. We want transpose. Notice how when you hover over it, it gives you a preview. This is Excel 2010, I think. But this works in earlier versions of Excel as well. You want to transpose. If you go to paste special, one of the options will be transpose, and that's what we want, because it actually then instead of going in this order in rows, it now goes across in columns. Once you do that, you don't need these anymore, so we will delete them and they'll go away. So let me repeat this a few times. Transpose, delete. Actually, I can delete them all at once here with another helpful trick. So let's see, I'm putting them in D, so go here and there, and copy, and transpose, and copy, transpose. Here's another opportunity, by the way, to get rid of a movie that you maybe aren't going to consider, because if you can reduce the number of options, it makes it easier to do your planning in just a bit, like that. Then you can highlight the rows, right click, and hit delete. Then the tip that I wanted to show you is F4. F4 will repeat the last action you did, so actually it saves you a little bit of time and clicking. You just get rid of this stuff. So I'm just hitting F4 every time here to repeat the last action that I did. So now we've got things arranged left to right chronologically. The last bit of cleanup that we're going to do, though, is we're going to get rid of these A's and these P's. These are text. This is text in this cell. So you see up here in the formula bar, which we're going to refer to here several times, the formula bar. It tells you that the contents of this cell are a text 9:30A. And we actually want these to be numbers. Actually, they're going to be representations of time. So let's highlight all of these columns, and let's just use replace again. So Control H again, and you just tell it find what? Find A for AM and replace it with just blank. Replace all. So it did it 14 times. Find P and replace all, and it found them all. All right, so now what you have is, you can see right there, now you have its best guess is that this is a time, and sure enough, that's actually what we want. So, all right, so now, what's this? Oh, this midnight over here. Let's get rid of that M. Okay, there we go. By the way, another way to call this here is that if you decide, well, I'm not going to go start a movie at 10 p.m. or later, you can just get rid of them right here as well, and that'll help narrow it down. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the running time of the movie. Now, one thing, of course, as you know, there are trailers at the beginning of films with previews and all kinds of ads and all kinds of stuff. If you know that your local theater adds 5 to 10 minutes worth of stuff at the front, we actually want to make this 10 minutes longer. I'm going to choose 10 in my case because I want to know the length of time, like when the movie is actually going to end. And of course, it ends 10 minutes later than you think. So I'm actually going to add 10 minutes to each of these here. Now with Excel, you may already know, or maybe you don't. There's 10 minutes. If you do a formula, and I'm going to do a formula by hitting equals, you can follow along up here or in the cell itself. This equals this cell plus this cell, and you hit enter. And now what you see is that it takes an hour 56 minutes and it adds 10 minutes to it, so it becomes 2 hours and 6 minutes. Now this is basic Excel stuff right now, is that the contents of C2, the cell that I have highlighted right now, it displays 206, but what it contains is this, A2 plus B2. So if you're not familiar with that, just sort of think about that here a little bit. It's the contents of A2 plus the contents of B2, and then it shows the result. Okay, so that's one bit of basic Excel behavior that I want to mention. The other one is that if you copy the cell with the formula and you paste it in another location, Excel tries to be helpful by copying the not only the formula but adjusting it for where the formula has been moved to. So for example here, now it says A5 plus B5 because that's the row we're on right here, is row 5. So up here it said A2, B2, A5, B5. So that's one way that you could do this, is that you could have this little part of the equation copied all the way down here, and then you could copy this formula and paste it all the way down here, and that's going to get the job done, but this takes too long. So let's eliminate a little bit of this work here, okay? So this is good, this formula is good. This plus 10 minutes equals that to make the new running time. But this time I'm going to copy the formula down here, or rather before I copy the formula down here, this isn't going to work. Do you see why it doesn't work? Is that I don't have the 10 minutes here. This formula is A5 plus B5, so all it's doing is it's taking this, adding 0 to it, and it gets the same result. So what I need to do is I need, instead of B5, I need this to constantly point to B2. If I could lock that, if I could anchor that to B2, then I could just copy this all the way down and it'll always just add 10 minutes. All right. So the keyword there that in my mind is anchor. I want to anchor this reference to B2 every single time. And to do that, you do what's called an absolute reference. If you put a $sign in front of B and a $sign in front of 2, what you've done here is you've made an absolute reference. So what this means is that never change it from B2. Always refer to B2. And the mnemonic that I use when I'm talking to people is that you want to anchor it here, and the $sign kind of looks like a funky, weird sort of anchor. You can imagine throwing that off a boat and anchoring it so your boat doesn't move. So I hit enter now. So this formula, nothing's changed here, but now check out when I copy and paste this down here. Now it's actually added 10 minutes to it, because look at the formula. The formula is A5, which is the new time, plus B2. B2 did not change. Okay, it's an absolute reference. So now I can go down here on the same row, paste, paste. So you see each one of these now is adding 10 minutes, and it's all referring to this one 10-minute cell right here. Notice, by the way, if I change this, let's say instead of 10 minutes, I decide to make this 8 minutes or 5 minutes. Watch all the formulas in this column here. See how they all change? They all change because they're all pointing to that cell as the second half of the formula. So that's very powerful. If you ever wanted to, change this value, what if something took 5 minutes longer? Or what if something cost 25 cents more? and you had a big matrix of this kind of stuff, you could have them all point to this absolute reference point right here. All right, so let's change this back to 10 minutes because that's what I actually want, is 10 minutes. And copy the formula to the remaining spots here, like that. All right. All right, so now to clean this up, I no longer need this column with the 10 minutes, and I want to delete it. But before I delete it, I do have to do something special to C. Notice if I delete the contents, watch the formulas in the column C. See, they all revert back. So that's not what I want, because I want the resulting formula. I want these values, but I don't want it to be a formula anymore. I just want it to be just the value. So here's a stunt that I use time and again as well. If you highlight the range, you can highlight the whole column if you want. You Control-C copy, and then you're going to do a paste special. You can do that either by right-clicking and go to paste special and get to these menus. Another thing that you can do with Office, I think it's 2007 or later, is that if you just Control-V, you notice that right away you get this little helper box that pops up here, and if you were to hit Control or just hover over it and click it, you would get these paste options, and that's what we want. So what we want here is, and you can scroll through them and see what they are. Instead of just plain old paste, instead of formulas, what we actually want are right down here, values, paste values. So that's the shortcut key is V. Now if you select that, it looks like nothing's happened. I mean, it looks like, okay, those are the same numbers. But check it out. If you look on this cell now, it's no longer a formula. Now it's actually the value that the formula returned. So each one of these now is a value. You can see up here in the formula bar, these are values. So let me do that again. Let me undo. Notice that cell C2 is this weird formula. I copy, I paste, I hit Control, and I hit the shortcut key V, and now these are values that will not change when I get rid of column B. All right, let me this is the running time of the movie plus trailers, and these are the start times for all the movies. I don't really need all of these anymore. They have served their purpose. And furthermore, let me move these just for readability and move them up. All right, so we've got our movies. Double click between the columns and it widens it out. And we've got the running time, and then this is just a space, and then here we've got all the available times. All right, now we're going to do a similar kind of formula thing in order to see when these show times end. And we're going to do something similar to what we did with the 10-minute tweak. All we're going to do is we're going to say the cell just below the start time equals the start time plus the running length, and hit enter. Now before I hit enter, I'm going to copy this all the way throughout this page, and I kind of want, or at least certainly in this row, and you know, I don't want to have to enter this formula multiple times. Also, let me show you the behavior. If I take this and I copy it here, this doesn't work out because what it does is you notice the little green and the blue box. That kind of helps you see what is referenced in the formula. The blue box is okay, but the green box is not. It's moving. And if I continued copying this over like this, each one of these is going to be wrong because look, it's adding time. It's not behaving the way I want. It's adding the time above to the cell that is above and 2 to the left. So once again, we need our friendly absolute reference to solve this particular problem. So instead of just making it B1, I want to have the anchors on there, the absolute reference. So here's another shortcut that I learned recently, is that if you hit F4 while you're in edit mode, you can make them both absolute references just like that. By the way, if you cycle through F4, you can cycle through all these options. You can do this one, just lock the row, lock the column, or remove the absolute reference. So you see, you just cycle through it. But the first time you hit it, wherever the cursor is, it'll make that cell an absolute reference. Okay, so what we've got here is 10 a.m. plus 2 hours and 6 minutes means it ends at 12:06 p.m. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for start times and end times. All right, so if I copy this over, and I'm doing it by dragging that little black box in the lower right-hand corner, I'll just show you that each one of these now is the cell above it plus B1. The cell above it plus B1. And to confirm that, you can click in the cell also, and you see that the green box never changes. I hit escape, and then you can see that the green box is doing its thing. So let's just drag this and copy it all the way over. So now we have start and end times, and the end time has the trailers taken into account. All right, so now when we copy this and paste it down here, now be careful here, this is still anchored to B1. So this is actually this start time plus B1, and we don't want that. We actually want it to be the running time of this movie here. So here's a real easy way to do that rather than having to retype the whole thing, is that if you just click in here and you see the green cell, you just point to the edge of the green cell and drag it down. So now you've changed the formula to be on the same row, and this is actually what we want. So we just copy this over. So we're just going to do this a few times. Drag this down. Actually, I just get into a better routine. Actually, you can do it on several like this, and just do several steps that are similar in one go, and sometimes it goes a little faster because you get that whole repetitive thing. I've got my finger on the enter key, and it can go a little faster. So let's go here, enter here, enter here, oops, enter here. All right, and then to copy, just drag this over like this. All right, there we go. So now we've got start times and end times. And this bottom row here is a formula. Now, I do a sort of an additional step here, mostly because I don't read time in like a 24-hour clock format. So it takes me an extra step to figure out that 15:29 is actually 3:29. And I don't really care for that. So here's an extra step that I do that you probably, you don't have to if you don't want to. But first of all, I want to turn all these formulas into values. I don't want them to be formulas anymore. And this doesn't take long anymore because we've already learned how to do that. We just highlight everything, and we copy, paste, and then we paste special, and we can use the little helper box up here to paste values. And now these are hard-coded as values rather than being formulas. Now technically we don't need this running length anymore unless you want to have it for your reference so that you know that this movie is 3 hours and 2 minutes long. So we'll leave it for now. All right, so the last bit of polish here is to get rid of these 24-hour time designations here. There might be a way to format it. Let's see if I format it. Yeah, there's probably some way to format it so that it doesn't do that anymore. Yeah, but I don't want it to change the layout that I have. So here's what I've done instead. And again, I do it. It looks like it takes a long time, but it happens pretty quickly. Just find an empty cell here at the bottom and just put 12 hours in it. Now we're going to do that same bit of business where we have a formula that anchors to this cell. So right here, I'm going to say this equals this minus 12. And see, now it gives me a much more user-friendly, at least for my eyes, 136 here. But don't forget to make the A31 in this case an absolute reference with F4. Okay, so now I'm just going to paste this below each instance of the time displayed on a 24-hour format, to make it a little bit more readable, again, to my eyes. Let's do that same stunt where you highlight the range, you copy, paste, Control V. That's how fast it is, by the way. I'm explaining it so it takes longer, but that's how quickly that goes. I don't need the 12 anymore, so I get rid of it. These I'm going to replace the other time, so I get this little pop-up. Do you want to replace? I hit yes. So I'm gonna put my finger right over the Enter key, so I can very quickly just say yes, 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 and so on. There you go. Now you have a fairly clean list of the start and the end times. All right, so now becomes now is the sort of the work of planning out your day. If there are movies that you know that you definitely want to see, you don't want to, you want to make sure you see one movie, you can move these up higher in the list. You can just right click and hit cut and then insert it here at the top so that reminds you that this movie is most important to you. But otherwise, here's an approach you can take is that let's say you start with this movie starts at 9:35 and it ends at 12:14. Now, knowing that the start time for the actual movie itself is usually about 5 minutes into the block of time, you can then look and see, all right, well, what begins at around 12:14. So let's highlight this with color so we know where we are. So let's imagine I start my day at 9:35 and then this movie ends at 12:14. So let's see, here's a movie that begins at 12:15, so that's a possibility. You can go to that one pretty easily, and 12:40 might work, but there's a little bit of a wait there before it begins. Here's 12:30, that's less of the wait. Not as many options here, and I don't particularly want to see this movie necessarily, but we'll leave it here for an option. Okay, well, what if instead of we starting with this one, what if we start with this one? Okay, this one ends at around noon. What else ends around noon? Let's see, 12:15, 12:50, 12:40. You'll be waiting a little bit of time there. Not a whole lot of noon options here. 9:30 is kind of a weird start time. It's kind of early in the morning. What if you started instead with 10:15? Now you've got an end time of 12:45-ish. So here's a 15-minute wait. And let's see, 12:30, the trailers will probably be over. You might miss a little bit of the very beginning of the movie. That's no fun, but that is certainly an option as well. And so you just kind of go through this and you can clearly see, your choices before you. Cloud Atlas is 3 hours long. What happens if we say, okay, I definitely want to see Cloud Atlas, so I'll start with that, and it ends at 12:40 or so, and then I'm going to see, I probably can get away with seeing this, and because there's a little bit of an overlap there, but remember we've got end credits, and then we've got those trailers at the beginning, so you might actually be able to see that without missing much. This one ends at about 3 o'clock. All right, what else starts at around 3 o'clock? Here's a 3:20. Here's a 3:10. That's a possibility. What if we say this one? 5:45. Maybe, let's see. Maybe this one? 7:40. This is not a great... Oh, here's 7:45. And then, just for argument's sake, we've got 10:24. Is there anything... Well, we've got an 11 o'clock here and 11:10. Here's 11 o'clock. But it's Skyfall again, and we've already seen Skyfall here. So let's just say that. So here you've mapped out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movies that you could see in succession with minimal disruption. If you wanted to move this into chronological order, in the order of appearance rather, you can just cut this and say, okay, this is the first movie. You don't have to do this, but this one, and then it ends here, and then I go into this one. Let's try that again. Sorry, cut, and then insert. and then come out of that one, go into this one, and then out of this one into this one, and so on. And then this one here is the last movie of the day. And there you go. There's your timeline. And those are the movies that you're going to see in that order. You can get rid of the times that aren't relevant, and you can get rid of the movies that aren't relevant. And now you're left with just a small timetable like this. And now you know what your movie day is like. So that's it. That's how that works. Hope that's helpful. All these little Excel tips also can be used in many, many other applications. So hopefully it was useful for that as well, to help learn Excel, which is the greatest program ever written. And happy movie day.